Hello and welcome to today's webinar on digitally transforming a paper-based process with PowerApps. My name is Dougie Wood. I'm one of the solution architects here at Valto. I've got a lot of experience with sort of document solutions and sort of general digital transformation. Over the past couple of years, been focusing heavily on using PowerApps to provide digital transformations for organizations. I lead the development team here at Valto, so I get hands-on with these types of solutions on a day-to-day basis. Today's agenda, so we're going to be taking a look at an actual scenario. So this is looking at replacing an incident reporting form, which in this scenario, let's pretend is a paper-based process which an organization is having to manually fill out, scan in, and then report back and store it manually. What we're going to be looking at first is choosing our database. So for when you're designing your PowerApp, the very first thing that you're going to want to look at doing is actually designing your database. So how are you going to store your data? As the way you model that really is going to impact the way that you build your overall PowerApp solution. So in this scenario, I'm going to be using Microsoft Lists, which previously was known as SharePoint Lists, for my database. However, we are going to talk about a couple of different options as well as we move through. Then we're going to take a look at creating our PowerApp. So as promised, this webinar, we're going to be trying to create a PowerApp in an hour. So we can have something sort of actually functioning within the hour. We're then going to look at creating a Power Automate workflow. So in this scenario, we're going to take a look at creating an automated email based on a form being submitted. And then actually sharing our application, so sending that out to people so that they can actually use it and even collaborate, so having multiple people that could potentially be working on this application as well. We're going to take a little look at reporting on the collected data, so how we can have different views of the data and seeing that in different ways. Also at the end, I've got some useful resources, so if you would like a copy of these slides, please let me know. And there's some useful links there for some templates and some quick user guides as well. And we'll also have some time for some general Q&A at the end. So if there's any questions you have, there is a Q&A chat bar at the top. If you post in your questions there, I'll take a little look at those at the end. So today's takeaways from today's webinar is being able to choose the sort of best database for your PowerApp. And also know how to create an app in an hour. So actually how we can use some of these techniques I'm going to show you today to actually get started and get using PowerApps straight away. And then understanding the basics of Power Automate and how you can automate certain things like emails and notifications. So what the scenario is, so on the right hand side there, you'll be able to see that there is a incident report. So there is a form that potentially this could be a Word document, or potentially it's a piece of paper that people are filling out when there is a particular incident or accident happening in their business. So we're going to be replacing that. Now, the requirements essentially is that they would like to be able to access this new solution via mobile phones and tablets, which is perfect as PowerApps. You can install the mobile PowerApps app on your phone, and you can access your app there, or on a tablet like an iPad. Or if you wanted to, you can access it from your desktop or embed it into like a SharePoint intranet, for example, to access it easily there. They want it to be easy to use for non-technical staff. So again, another great way of sort of building an application with PowerApps is using some of these templates I'm going to show you, which are all designed to be nice and simple to use. Digitally store the data securely. So we're going to come on and talk about some different options for where you can store your data, but that is definitely something we're going to be taking a look at. And use only products included in existing Microsoft 365 licenses. So basic licenses like Business Basic or E1, for example, they all cover the use of things like SharePoint, Power Automate, and Canvas PowerApps, which is what we're going to be talking about today. They want to be able to automate things like notifications when a new instance is reported, so sending an email out to people. And that's what we're going to cover off with Power Automate. And then be able to view the reports of the data, so actually go in and sort of filter down data and pull out sort of useful information that they need to quickly. So the first thing we're just going to talk about is choosing our database. So there's a number of different options that you can pick, and I've got here the sort of the 4 key ones, which are the Microsoft databases that you could potentially use, or find if you're sort of Googling and looking into Power Apps, these are the sort of ones that you're going to come up against where people are thinking about using these as their sort of databases. And I've put them in kind of an order of how from little to big of how you might want to use these. So starting off with Excel. Now, really, Excel isn't a database, and it shouldn't really be used as a database. However, it can be used for small teams. If you're looking at sort of creating a Power App, and you're only going to be there's only going to be a small team of people, less than 10, say, for example, that are going to be using this app to submit data, and it's an easier way of submitting than just putting it into an Excel spreadsheet, for example, then Excel would be a good option. And you can even store that Excel document in your own OneDrive, for example, so you don't even need to have that stored in a shared kind of space. Now, if you're talking about hundreds of kind of lines of data or low thousands, Excel is probably fine for that, and it is included in all of the sort of Microsoft 365 licenses as well, so that is a potential option. The second option is lists. Now, I put in brackets there SharePoint, as a lot of people will know SharePoint as being the sort of a place where you can store data and store documents and things like that. But what you might not know is that there's a new product called Lists, which we're going to take a look at shortly, which is essentially a new front end, a new sort of better styled interface for SharePoint lists. And that's what this icon over here on the right-hand side symbolizes. Now, this allows you to store hundreds of thousands of sort of lines of data inside of there. And again, it's included in majority of your kind of Office 365 licenses. So you're probably already paying for licenses which cover the sort of list. So that's why in this scenario, we're going to be using our lists as our database, because it's quite broadly used. It's quite scalable. And for most solutions, you don't need to store that much more data than that. The next sort of step up would be something like SQL. Now, this is where you can store millions of sort of bits of sort of data. And it's for something that is a much larger enterprise level kind of application where it's going to be storing millions of rows of data. Now, again, it's very rare that you need a sort of scenario that's going to store that much data. It also means that you would have to pay for a premium Power Apps license, which most people don't usually have. So again, that would be a sort of a negative sort of reason for sort of using SQL as a database. However, the sort of pros of it is that quite a lot of businesses are already using things like SQL Server to store their data. So business applications and legacy systems potentially are already using SQL Server to store their data. So if it already exists in SQL, then it probably makes sense that you connect to that, or maybe you're looking at ways of surfacing that data, and Power Apps is a great way of plugging into that. But do remember that it requires a premium Power App connector to connect to that data. The next is we've got Dataverse. Now, this has recently changed its name. It was formerly known as a Common Data Service. And now this is essentially, if anyone's using Dynamics 365, they'll be kind of familiar with how entities and things like that are created. But essentially, Dataverse is a great way of kind of storing data. It's a bit like a sort of SQL, Cloud SQL, essentially, where you can store, again, millions of rows of data in there, and it's a much bigger kind of database. It's probably cheaper and easier than setting up SQL from scratch, but definitely if you're already using SQL, then it would be quite a transition to try and migrate the data into Dataverse, for example. So out of all those different options, Excel being the very small fry kind of database, where if it was only a small number of people that were using it and they weren't sort of planning on collecting much more than, I say, 1,000 rows of data, Excel would be fine for that type of application. Lists, as in a SharePoint list, this is great for up to, say, 100,000 sort of rows of data. It's included in all your licenses, so that's why it's a very popular place to store your data. SQL, again, my sort of recommendations are, unless the data is already in SQL, it's probably there's not a huge amount of point setting up a brand new SQL server purely for your application. And then Dataverse, if you're looking at something that is going to require a lot of data storage, then Dataverse is a really good place to start off with. So, going now to look at our sort of solution process. So the solution that we were talking about before was replacing that sort of paper form. So this is what our kind of solution looks like. So our employee essentially is then going to want to report an incident. So if they want to report an incident, they can get out their mobile phone and they open up the PowerApps app. Now, essentially what that's then doing is it's interfacing with our Microsoft List, which is our database where we're storing our data, and it submits the data into our Microsoft List database. And as an action of that, we have then got a Power Automate workflow, which is going to almost receive that there's a new item that's been created inside of this Microsoft List, and then it's going to create an automated email to somebody to say that there's this new incident that's been reported. We're also going to use Microsoft List as a way of kind of creating views to filter down our kind of information and see that at a glance. Maybe we want to sort of filter down and sort of see per department how many incidents there are, for example. Okay. So I'm going to transition now over and actually start with a live kind of demonstration. So we're going to jump into Microsoft Lists now. So Microsoft Lists is accessible through Office 365. So if I go into Office 365 homepage, which is just office.com, and then I click on the app launcher, you'll see we've got this lists icon here. Now, when I click on list, it's going to open up the lists homepage. Now, this is where I can see all the previous lists that I've created, all the sort of databases. Now, when I click on the new list across the top up here, this is the sort of interface which is going to allow me to then set up my new database. So this is where I'm going to be creating my list. There are a few different templates. So there's certain things like issue tracking, travel requests, things like that. Essentially, all this is going to do, though, is it's going to create you some columns of in your database, certain fields pre-created for you, and then you can expand on that. You can add your own fields onto that over whilst you're sort of building a solution. You can import from Excel as well. So if you've already got, say, an Excel spreadsheet which you're using as your kind of form process or storing the data there, you can import that from Excel, and that'll automatically then create the fields, the columns inside of your database. Or we can say from an existing list. So if I've already created a list and I just want to make some tweaks or I want to sort of expand on something which already exists, I can choose from an existing list. But in this case, I'm going to say I'm going to create a blank list. And I'm replacing my incident report. So in fact, let me just to one side, and then I'll just get up that incident report so we can see what this looks like. So the name of the database, I'm just going to call incident report because that is what we are going to be doing. I can give it a description, so I can say this list is going to store all of the submitted incident reports. Now I can choose a color. So at the moment, there's no way of setting kind of a color or defining a custom color, but it's great to just pick and choose a couple of different colors, which you might assign some kind of meaning to, and visually then you know when you're sort of looking at your different lists, it's a visual indicator. Same with this icon as well. We can't add our own icons at the moment, but there is a range of different kind of icons, so we can choose different ones in here, which might mean something to us. So I'm going to pick this little clipboard here. And then beneath this is saying, where do I want to save my list? Now, if I choose my lists, essentially this is going to store it in my own area. It's going to store it essentially only in my kind of area. But if I wanted to store this, say, for example, on a SharePoint site where multiple people can easily access it, I might want to save this on my team site, for example, so that people can access it easily. I'm just going to use my Dougie site because that's my own kind of team site in this scenario, but you might want to save this into, say, your operations team or sort of health and safety team or whatever it is that you've got in your SharePoint site. And then when I click on create, this is now going to go away and create me my Microsoft list. Now, the list, essentially, for anybody who's used SharePoint before, will realize that this is essentially just a SharePoint list. There's nothing drastically different. It's just got a nicer interface to jump directly into here rather than having to navigate all the way through a SharePoint site to get to this point. So the default field that it's then created inside my database is just called title. So if you see, if I click on new now in this form, all I have is the field of title and the default fields of attachments and the ability to apply a label as well. However, I now want to add some additional fields into my database because now what I'm doing is I'm modeling what the data is, which is I want to store inside of my form. So inside of this database here, I want to basically mirror these fields which are inside of the form, because that's what I'm going to be storing inside of here. So for example, if I click on add column, you can see these are the different types of fields that I can add. Now, all of these columns which appear in the database will all have a slightly different type of data that they get stored in. So for example, a single line of text would be something like this: name or department, where we've only got a short sort of space of text. It's a single line of text and that's all it needs to be. However, something like this incident causes or follow-up recommendations, that would need to be multiple lines of text because it's a much bigger space and it requires a lot more text. Location would be great for like a location field where you might be able to tag an address or a postcode of where the particular incident happened. A number would be, say, for example, sort of like 1, 2, 3, 4, obviously, but essentially the difference between like number and currency would be, if I wanted to then do analysis on this afterwards, so we can export this data into Excel, we would want to have the correct sort of column type, so that, say, for example, if it was a currency, we can do a calculation on that to add up that sort of currency afterwards, or a number. So let's say, for example, how many incidents happened on that day or something. We would need it to be a number so that we can calculate it. Whereas if we stored how many incidents had happened as a line of text, we wouldn't then be able to do a calculation on it afterwards. So that's why it's important to choose the right type of column. We've got other columns as well. So we've got things like yes, no. So for example, here where we've got police notified, yes or no, that might be a good example of when we would use that kind of yes or no column. A person, so this might be sort of tagging somebody. So this is going to pull out almost contacts from your Active Directory, so you can select someone, just like in a CC field of an email. You'd be able to select somebody that exists inside of your organization, and then that's not only going to select that person, but in the database you also then have access to all of the profile properties that you're then selecting of that person, so their email address, what department they're in, their phone number, and things like that. We've got date and time, so this would be a great field to sort of say the sort of date of when the incident occurred. A choice, so this might be a drop down, so this might be saying, I don't know, what body part was injured in the incident or something like that: head, shoulders, knees and toes, for example. Or a hyperlink, so this is related to something that might have a sort of a follow-up sort of or like a web page that you wanted to sort of hyperlink to. We've got currency and we've got image. So if we were storing like maybe like an image or attachment related to this as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start working through some of these fields and creating some of these different fields as columns inside of here. So the first one is name. So I'm going to click on single line of text, and this is just going to be a name. Okay. We can give it a description. So if we want to say this is the full name of the person, the default value, if there was one, any options, so whether or not we want to require that this column contains information. We can set a maximum number of characters. So say, for example, this is more in the case of maybe like follow-up recommendations. We might not want more than, say, 500 characters to be entered. We don't want sort of a sort of war and peace being written out into this app. We only want a short snippet of the follow-up actions. So once I'm happy with this column, I can click on save, and that then adds this field. Now, when I click on new, you can then see it's already added this field into my sort of database form. Now I'm going to choose, I'm going to select say department, and in this case I'm going to choose a choice field. So as a choice department, I'm going to select, say, operations, IT, marketing, something like that. And again, I can select a description. I can choose a default value. So if it was going to be a sort of default to somebody, and then once I'm happy with that, I can click on save. And now when I go into my form, you can see that additional field's there, and it's automatically a drop down as with my choices. Next will be a phone number. So single line of text is our phone number. And then we'll add a location. And then this is going to say for our location, what sort of linked columns would we like it to pull through? So if we were to enter a postcode, it could automatically pull out then the sort of city or the street address or the country that it relates to. I'm going to select a date. So I'm going to use the date and time field, and I'm going to select date. And then we can choose, it could either be a sort of include the time or not. So I can say, yes, I want it to include the time. Friendly format or unfriendly format, that just means if it's whether it's a short or long kind of date. And also a default value, whether or not we want to say today's date or a selected date and time. So I can say today's date. Somebody can always change that, but that just means then when they open the app, it will pre-fill that date field with today's date and time. So there's certain fields that you might want to pre-populate just to save time for people who are actually then submitting the app. So click on save. Then I'm going to choose police notified. So it's going to be a yes no column in this case because I want a yes no output. So I'm going to say police notified. And the default value, now with a yes no field, you always have to have a default value. So I'm going to default it to no because it's probably going to be quite rare that police are notified. However, people will be able to also select yes as well from a drop down. And then I want an incident details. This is going to be a multiple lines of text because it's quite a big space that I'm looking to fill. I'm expecting quite a bit of text from people. So I'm going to say incident details. And then we could put a bit of a description in there about what it is, so what happened. Oh. Then we might have an incident causes. So again, we'll have multiple lines of text. And then we'll do one more, follow-up recommendations. Now, the bottom area of the form here, which says reported by, I'm not going to actually create these fields. The reason being is that what's pretty good about using kind of SharePoint and PowerApps to combine together is if you ever create an item, it actually already knows based on the Office 365 credentials you're logged in with who you are and the date and time that the item was created. So I don't need to actually even create that. But I'll show you now. If I create a new item, I want to say this is for Mr. Let's say W. Wood. From the department of IT, phone number is blah blah, location Chester railway station, let's say. Date and time is pre-built to today. Police notified, no. Incident details is some details, cause, and so on, and then click on save. I can actually then click on the item. So if I click on the item, oops, there we go. I'll add in some additional, when we come back and talk about views, I'll show you that there are some columns which already capture who has created the item and when it was actually created. So just to recap, we've now gone into our list. We've created our list database, which is created it inside of SharePoint. We've created our fields to match our incident report form, and we've added a line of data. Now, what I would suggest we do at this stage is I would also create some additional lines of data, because this is really going to help when you create your app to see that the correct fields have been populated. So to quickly create some more data, you can click on this edit in grid view. Now what that will do is it'll put your database into kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, where it means you can select multiple rows and we can sort of drag them sort of down. So say, for example, here, I'm going to put in, let's just say, I'm going to change this to operations. I can then change that by just dragging that down. So I can add multiple items nice and easily. So we'll change this person's name to Joe Bloggs. This person's Ted Jones. So now we've got plenty of data inside of our database. So drag that down. Just so we can make sure that we've got plenty in here. So it's easy to see. I click on exit grid view, and now I've got my data saved. Oops. Let's refresh this. Now I've got my data saved inside of my list and it's ready to go. So essentially, I've modeled my fields and I've created some data, and now I'm ready to create my Power App directly from this data. So all of these fields now have already been sort of entered, and they're ready to be converted into a Power App. So now what we can see at the very top of our list up here is we've got this option here called Power Apps. Now when we click on the drop down, we've got an option here which says create an app. Now what this is going to do is it's automatically going to create me a Canvas Power App, which is using the mobile template. It can only use a mobile template, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And this is going to model it on this data. So the reason why it's good to have all your columns in there and have some data in there is when it's going to try its best to map this into an app for me. I might need to tweak and change a few things, but it's going to map this into an app directly for me. So I can click on create an app. I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this incident reporting. And then I'm going to click on create. Now what this is going to do is it's now processing in the background all of the kind of columns and fields that I've created, and it's going to try and create for me a mobile Power App that is ready to go, it's ready to start using. I might need to do some tweaks and changes to it. It doesn't always get it quite right, but it's a good 90% ready to start using. Just taking its time. Almost there. There. So it's now created us our Canvas app based on the data that we've created inside of our SharePoint list. So this already has some basic kind of functionality built into it. Now you can see here, this is the first page of our Power App. Now with Power Apps, you can see the pages, which they refer to as screens inside the app on the left-hand side. So by default, it's created 3 screens. It's created the browse screen, which is the home page of the app. It's created a details screen, which is essentially the form sort of details when it's not in edit mode, it's just being viewed. And it has an edit screen, which is the form in edit mode that you can then edit. So if I go back to the browse screen, I can play this app, which means I can run it to see what it looks like when someone was to actually use this particular app. So I click on play. This would be the sort of home page. This is the app as they first open it. Now, if I click on this plus button across the top, I can then add a new item in here. So if I was to add in here, say, Mr. Bob Fisher, or something like that, and then select a department and a phone number. Now we can see all the other fields haven't yet been they haven't been processed in. So I'm going to have to go back and update this form. It's not got it quite right. The sort of AI which has generated this has not got it quite right. So we're going to update that. So we click on submit item, and you can see it's now added my item in here, and it is automatically storing it directly inside of my instant reporting inside of SharePoint. So if I just refresh here, you can then see my item has been saved directly into my Microsoft list. So if I just come back into my Power App, close out this. So there's a few things which are just not quite right about the app that I would like to update. The first thing is the sort of general colouring might not be quite as I would like. Now you can change the theming up here. So if I click on theme, you'll then see that there's a couple of different options so we can get it close to sort of colour schemes of our organisation. So let's say, for example, I quite like this blue, and it's probably the closest kind of blue that I'm going to get to the Valto blue. Just from that theming. You can of course change sort of the colours, and you can create your own different themes, but we don't have enough kind of time today to cover off that. So I'm just going to change that colour. The next thing is on these items here. It's pulling through the sort of fields in a little bit of an odd kind of way. So for example, if I click on this here, you'll see that it's just showing sort of Mr. Now, what essentially it's doing is it's using formula, which is just like in Excel, to pull through data. So at the moment it's saying this item dot title. So it's pulling through the title field from my database. But I think it might be better actually that I pull through the name of the person here. So instead I'm going to replace the dot title with just dot name. And that's then going to update this through all of this to show the name. Now I might want to say say let's say this one's the department field. So because this is actually a good example, because that this is a choice field, just using .department is not going to pull through the full value. So you need to put a full stop after it, and then you can see that it's suggesting that I use value. So I select value, and then it's going to pull through the value. And on this one, maybe let's just set this as the phone number. It's also really good with Power Apps that it will actually suggest to you the options you have. So just by putting in this item and then full stop, it's then going to show me all the different properties that this item has, and then I can choose to select from them. And as I start typing things in, it'll filter that down so it knows I've got a phone number, so I'm going to select that. So now that looks a little bit more realistic, and I can see who they've been reported as and the sort of phone numbers of people I could contact for them. So that's the home page now sorted. So we've now got the home page sorted out. The next page is the details screen. So this is the details that we want to see of our individual incident report. Now, in this case, it looks like it's not too far off the sort of general kind of information that I might want to see. I can select individual fields, and I can actually just click the delete button and delete those if I wanted to. And to add new fields, I can click on the edit fields button on the right hand side, which is then going to show me the fields which exist inside of my Power App. So I've got title, I've got name, I've got department, phone number so far. So I just want to go back, and in fact, let me just this in place and snap that in place, and then I can just check what fields that I need. So I've got title, I've got name, I've got department, I've got phone number. So what I would also want to have, I might want the date field in this view. I'm going to select date, click on add, and I might want to have the incident details, incident causes, and the follow-up actions as well as our summary. So I'll have incident details, causes, and follow-up recommendations. Click on add. Now that's then added these fields into this view. So if I just close that down, zoom in a little bit, you can now see this is what the page would look like if I selected an item. So if I go back to the home page and click on play and select an item, you can then see this is now the form that I can see my item on. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to edit the edit screen. So now the final screen is the edit screen. Again, let's remove some of these different locations on here, and we'll add some new fields. So just click on this, click on edit fields. We'll now add in, which ones did it have? I think phone number. So we'll now add in our location field, and we'll use a postcode, a date, whether the police were notified, the incident details, incident causes, and the follow-up. Add. Now we can close that and close that. And now we can see the fields appearing inside of our Power App. So this is now the edit form ready to go. There's a couple of things that you might want to tweak as well. That things like, for example, the multi-line text, it will put it to the same size as a normal kind of field, but you can play around with that. You can just drag it and choose to sort of drag this around a little bit so you can get as much space as you like inside of your form. But that takes a little bit of sort of fiddling around with that you can do afterwards. So if I go back to my browse screen now and click on play, you can see I can add a new item by clicking on this button up here. So I can say Mr. Let's just say Joe Logs, department, operations, phone number, that. The date is automatically saying today, but let's say I'm saying it's for yesterday at say 9 o'clock in the morning. The police was notified, yes or no. Incident details, fell downstairs. Incident causes, tripped over a box. Follow-up recommendations, move the box. And then click on the save button. And now that's added my item into my Power App. So if I go back now out of my app, back into SharePoint, you can see that item has been submitted into here. Okay. Now, inside my app, obviously there's loads of more things that I could do to this app, but I've now got a working app really quickly that I can start using to submit data and storing that directly inside of my Microsoft list. So if I'm happy with all my changes now, I can click on the File button, click on Save. This is now going to save my changes. And when I click on Publish, this is now making the app readily available and I can start sharing this with people. So if I click on the Share button, this is now going to open up the settings of this particular Power App, and it's going to take me to the sharing page. So by default, because I created this Power App, only I have access to this Power App at this point in time. Now I can choose to share this, so I could type in, say, a colleague's name, say, select this for Chris, and then I can choose whether or not he's a user, which is just by default, is just a user list, or I can choose to make him a co-owner. So if he's a co-owner, that means he can edit, he can share the app, but he cannot delete or change the original owner. So I will always remain the main owner of this app. However, I could make Chris a co-owner, meaning that he can edit this particular document, this particular Power App. Also, there's a little reminder here to make sure your users have access to the data that's used in the app, including gateways and things like that, so instant reporting. So I'll go back and I'll show you how we share our data as well to make sure that Chris has access to this. So I'm going to click on Share, and it's automatically going to send him an email invitation, which is going to allow him to come in and see the app. I can also share with groups as well. So if I was to type in, say, for example, the operations security group, I could add in a security group. So you don't have to do it as an individual user by user basis. You can do it for security groups as well to sort of speed up that kind of process as well. Okay. So now we've got our Power App set up. And we're back in our kind of list. So we would now want to share this list to make sure that people had access to be able to submit data into this. So again, I can just click on the Share button here, and I could type in Chris's name and then say, this is the database for our app. And then click on Grant Access. And now he would have access to this database as well. So he's now got access to the database to be able to submit data, and he's got access to the Power App to be able to open up in Power Apps and submit that particular data. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to take a look at is Power Automate. So we've now created our database. We've got that we can store our data in there. We've got our Power App which can submit data into that database. But now we want to notify somebody that a new incident report has actually taken place. So to do that, we're going to use Power Automate to create a workflow. Now you can see across the top, just like we've got Power Apps, we also have this Automate, which is short for Power Automate. So if I click on that, you'll be able to see there's this Power Automate button, which allows me to create a new flow. Now, what that will do is it will pop out a window from the right-hand side, which will show me some suggested templates that I can use for creating a new Power Automate workflow. So these are some of the most common. So, for example, I'll send a customized email when a new SharePoint list item is added. That's what I'm going to use. We can also do things like approval-based processes. We can create all sorts of different things that I'll show you in a second. So I'm going to use this send a customized email when a new SharePoint list item is added. So the next thing it's going to do is bounce me through to this page, which is going to check that I have the right connections inside of Office 365 to use this. And if I don't have the right connections, all it would do is it would say here, please make a connection. You'd click this button here and you would be able to click on add new connection, and it will just create those connections in there for you. I've already got the connections set up, so it's good to go. And basically what this is saying is like with any kind of app, it's asking what sort of what data it can interact with on your behalf. So it's saying, can we get Office 365 users, i.e. profiles? Can we get can we sort of automate your Outlook? So we send emails on your behalf? And can we access SharePoint on your behalf? And that's essentially what this is asking for permission to do. I'm happy with all of that. So I'm now going to click on Create Flow. And this is now going to create me my Power Automate workflow using that template that I selected. So the template was to send a customized email when a new SharePoint list item is added. This will then take me to this sort of summary of the workflow page. And I now need to click on the edit button to be able to edit the workflow. Now the workflows are very kind of visual in the way that they kind of are set up. They're all just kind of building blocks that you can kind of drag and drop into place to form your workflow. Now, every workflow, every Power Automate workflow basically runs from top to bottom. And like with everything, it has a start, a middle, and an end. So the start is what we refer to as a trigger. So it must have a trigger. It must have something which starts off the Power Automate workflow. And in this case, it is when a new item is created. And it's when a new item is created in this incident reporting. So as a new item is added in here, regardless of if it was created by PowerApps or if you created it directly in the list database, it will trigger this workflow. So that is my trigger, but there's all sorts of different triggers that you could use, and you can base it on all different types of kind of content. It doesn't have to just be SharePoint. It doesn't even have to be Office 365. It could be a trigger based on when you received a tweet on Twitter, for example. It could be scheduled. So it could be every day run this particular workflow. There's all sorts of different triggers that you can use. The next thing is that all workflows are made up of potentially up to 3 things. One is a trigger, which is the first thing. The second is a condition. So it could be like an if statement. So if this, then do that, for example. So if, say, for example, back in our report in here, it might be that we only want to issue an email if the police have been notified. So if a new item is added and the police have been and the police notified box is yes, then do this, otherwise do that. So there's conditions that you can build into your Power Automate as well. And then we've got actions. So for example, here we've got an action, get my profile. So it's just going to get my profile information of the current user and then send an email based on that. But there are all sorts of different actions. So if I just click on this here, we can see we can add a new action. And there's all sorts of different things that we can use. If I just expand this out, you'll see all the different connectors, all the different connections that Power Automate can connect to. And it's not just Microsoft products, so it's not just things like sort of Word and PowerPoint and things like that, but it's got other Microsoft products like Microsoft Teams. So as a trigger, it might be when a new channel message is added for a selected message, when I mention a channel. So those are triggers that could trigger a flow. And then actions for teams, you could create a new team, you could get messages of a team, you could post into a team. There's all sorts of different actions you could do for Microsoft Teams. But that's the same for all these different products. There's all sorts of third-party products as well that it integrates with. And you can search them as well. So let's say, for example, I think there's ones for like Salesforce. So we go into Salesforce and you can see actions for Salesforce. So Salesforce is nothing to do with Microsoft. It's a third-party product, but you can integrate directly with it. So you could create a new record in your Salesforce CRM. You could get a record. You could update something, and it integrates directly with this. So all of these actions are pre-built into Power Automate for you just to build into your workflow. And then we've got those things like I was talking about before, where we've got conditions, so that we could say, if this is equal to this, then do this, otherwise do that. So conditions are really easy to add in as well to work out what that kind of logic is going to be. I'm happy with this kind of workflow as it is. So when a new item is created, it's going to get my profile and it's going to send an email. Now I can customize that email template in here by just going into the body, and I can just put in here, this is some text. And then that essentially is then going to update that particular email template. Don't worry too much about these kind of variable things. Essentially, all they are is all the different properties that we are using inside of Power Automate we can add into here. So for example, it's got my email address using the get my profile. It's also got my name in here. So I could say something like, I could include kind of like my email address or contact information inside of here if I wanted to, but I'm happy with this. So the last thing I want to do inside of my workflow is I want to give it a unique name. So I might want to call this my incident reporting notification, something like that, or I'll call it email, incident reporting email. And then now I'm happy with this, I can click on save. And then when I click on this back button, you'll see at the bottom here, this is the run history. So this is where I can check that my workflows have actually been running. So let's put this to the test now. So if I go back now into my PowerApp, wherever that was, back into my PowerApp, and I'm going to create a new item. So create a new item, call this Mr. Logs. I'm not going to fill out all the fields, I'll just put in a couple of things in here and then click on save. That's then going to create my new item. It's then going to submit it into my database. So it's automatically going to create a new item in here. and then it's going to trigger my Power Automate workflow from in here. So if I just click on this in here, it might take a couple of seconds to start. Also, it's worth mentioning I can create it if a new item is added in here, either with the quick edit like this, or by adding a new item into my database through this form. It will automatically trigger the workflow as well. So I go back into here, and sometimes when you're first using this, it will take a few minutes just to start running. But now I can see my workflow as ran, so that email will have been issued. In fact, that email's just popped up on my other screen, so I can see here the email's been issued. Hi Dougie, there's some test text that I put in, and it's just got a test bit of email. So that's the email now come through based on me creating that new item. I can also, if I ever got any errors or the flow wasn't working, I can go in here and I can troubleshoot this, and I can make sure I can see that this actually ran, who it was sent to, the subject, the email, and I can sort of troubleshoot any issues I have directly using this run history to see exactly what's happened with my Power Automate workflow. It's also worth mentioning as well that Power Automate have got loads of different templates as well. So if you're looking to get kind of started with this, I would recommend going into the templates area of Power Automate, and you can find all sorts of different workflows and different things. A lot of them are kind of like maybe 70–80% of the overall kind of process you're looking for, but you might be able to use them to start building things like approval systems and things like that. So there's different types of things that connect into here. I mean, there's some which sound a bit bizarre, like get today's weather forecast for my current location. I always think, well, you could just look out a window to find out what the weather's doing. However, if you think about it, you might be able to use that. Say, for example, if you were a company which were doing a lot of outdoor kind of work, or say you're a construction company and you're doing a lot of outdoor work, you might want to use this workflow to run at 6 o'clock every morning. It gets the weather forecast, and then it uses like an if statement, like a condition, to work out what the weather is going to do, and then send an email based on that. So if it's going to be raining, it might send an email to people to say it's going to be raining today. Make sure you're wearing your sort of coat and wellies and stuff. Or if it's going to be sunny, maybe it's sort of shorts and sort of t-shirt kind of weather. So you can make those informed decisions automatically using Power Automate. Okay. So just going back into our list then. So now we've got our data inside of here. We can now start doing some basic kind of reporting on this data. Now, there's a couple of different ways that we could do this. One way is we can choose to export the data directly into Excel. So if I click on Export to Excel, this is just going to download this data for me. I can open this up, click on Enable. Now I can see the data directly inside of here, and we can create kind of sort of charts and things like that based on the information quite easily with inside of Excel, as I'm sure you're aware. But also this has got a live connection now to this data. So if I add a new record in here, let's just say Mr. Ted Jones, let's call this, go and save. If I go into my Excel document now and click on data and then refresh, it's not liking that for some reason. It's probably that these are a bit too long for it to pull through, but essentially that would automatically pull that data directly through for me into my Excel spreadsheet. So something else. There's also another cool little tip as well. If you use this data analysis button over on the right side of Excel, once you've got your data, you can then see some very quick things that it can create for you. So some things like to sort of show how many incidents have been created per person based on departments. You can see here Joe Bloggs appears the most often. So Joe Bloggs has had the most amount of incidents. And you can see that Mr. accounts for the majority of the time. So there's some things that you can obviously refine, but using that data analysis button, it will give you some short snippet information that you could then base sort of charts. I can insert, say, this pivot chart directly into my Excel sheet, and I can tweak that and work on that directly from in here. And as I say, it will have that live link directly to my SharePoint database that I can refresh at any time. Also inside the database, we can create our own views of this data. Now, by default, there's one view of this database, which is just known as all items, which is going to show me all the different items that I have access to inside of this database. So this is where the all items is shown up here. But I can create my own views of this if I wanted to. So say, for example, if I wanted to filter to say I'm only interested in operations incidents. So if I click on this drop down here and click on filter by, and then choose, for example, oh, it shows up. Let's just refresh this actually. Sometimes my internet can go a little bit slow when I'm sharing my screen. So I'm going to filter by. I'm going to filter by, say, operations and click apply. Now what you'll see is on the top right here, this view, I've got a little star now, a little asterisk, which is showing me that this view has now changed from its default. So I can then choose to save this as a new view. So I might want to click on save view as, and then call this my operations view. Now this tick box here is saying whether or not I want to make it public, that other people can see my operations view in their drop down, or if I untick it, only I will see that particular view. But in this case, I want everyone to be able to see that. So I'm going to click on save. And now this is just a basic example of a filter, but we could have filtered many different columns to kind of get that information. And it means that we can jump directly back into this view at any time. And to refresh. Occurs to the live demonstration, I think my internet is slowly giving up. There we go. So if I save view as, call this operations, and save. Right. Anyway, so essentially what will happen is you would save this operations and it would show up as operations in here. It also means if I choose to export to Excel, it'll only export the data which is stored inside of here. We can also update our view to have either more or less columns in here. So if I choose to edit the current view, I will be able to see all the different columns which are existing. So say, for example, I didn't need to see all of this information in the view. I only need to see, say, the name, the department, the date. And also, if you remember, the people who created this item is automatically stored by the system. So I can choose the created and the created by columns, which the system already has. And then when I click on OK, that's going to add it automatically into my view. My internet is well and truly giving up. There we go. So it's now updated my view. And now I can see I've got less columns. I've got my created, so when was it created and who created it, that appears inside of here as well. So let's just try one last time, see if we can filter by operations. No, I think we're going to give up with that. So essentially, that's a way of filtering our kind of views and saving them. And we're going to export our data directly into Excel to do some analysis as well. So just as a quick recap, if I just maybe just go back to this slide, what we created, so we created a PowerApp which replaced our paper-based process. We used Microsoft List as our database, which stored all of our data inside of it. We then used Power Automate to automatically send an email to somebody. And then we used Microsoft List to create views of our data, which we can then export into Excel for analysis purposes. Some useful resources as well that you might want to use for things after this event. We've got the top 10 Power App examples. So if you're thinking about using Power Apps, there's a blog article there that's from Valto that shows some good examples of what PowerApps can potentially be used for. Also some PowerApps templates. So PowerApps has some pre-built templates that you can take a look at using yourself. There's also a PowerApp Automate template, so you can browse those templates, and that's the link to the web page that I was showing you before. Also some getting started with Power Automate documentation, and some learning pathways as well, which are really useful for like online training courses for Power Automate if you wanted to get started with that. And also our Valto YouTube channel. So all of our webinars, including today's webinar, will be uploaded into our YouTube channel. So if you need some help, so essentially we can deliver remote workshops on today's topics. Everything that we've included, we can deliver in a PowerApp workshop. So typically with a PowerApp workshop, we sort of review kind of like your kind of current kind of solution and look at sort of helping you kind of build that out. We also offer things like Teams adoption workshops, SharePoint workshops, as well as migration workshops. If you need any help, you can always email me at dougie@valto.co.uk, and all of our workshops starting at $8.50, which include a fixed price proposal, as well as a specification document, a technical specification document of what would be delivered. So I'm just going to go over now, just conscious of time. I'm going to go over to the Q&As, just look to see if there's any questions from you guys. So the question there, can I have a copy of the slide deck, please? Yep, sure. If you email dougie@valto.co.uk, I'll be happy to send that over to you. Unfortunately, you're showing up as anonymous there, so I can't see who asked that question. Will this video be available to reference at a later date? Yes, it is, Jamie. It will be on our YouTube channel, so you can come back and look at that at any point in time. And if you get stuck or have any questions, feel free to give me a shout. Let's have a look. Is this being recorded? Yes, it is being recorded. If you remove title, can't get access to item. If you remove title, you then can't access the item is expected. You can remove the title, yeah, that you can remove just for ease and making it quicker for today's demonstration. I just left title in there, but yes, you definitely can remove the title field. By default, it is a required field inside of the sort of list, so you do have to go in and make it unrequired before you remove it. Otherwise, you can end up running into a couple of issues where the app will then be looking for a field which doesn't exist any longer. Question from Steve. Hi, Dougie. Great presentation. Thank you, Steve. Do you guys offer training sessions for us to build an app that would help us get started with one of our own forms? Yes, definitely. So we offer custom training. So we can provide training for you for all different levels, essentially. We offer sort of very beginning kind of sort of training, like similar to like what we've had today, and we can go all the way up to advanced. And we also offer support packages as well. So our support packages work based on what we refer to as support tokens. Now, one token is essentially 1 hour of our time, where you can kind of call off those hours as and when you need them. So a lot of our clients go with these kind of tokens where they can kind of have a little bit of training with us. They can go away and build some of these Power Automate workflows and things like that themselves. And then when they get stuck, they can rely on those support tokens to come back and kind of get an expert sort of help and assistance with that. So yeah, definitely we can have some training. So if you want to email me, we can happily get something set up for you. Do you have any case studies or examples of work you have done previously? Again, that's come from an anonymous person there, but yes, definitely. We recently published a case study where we created a PowerApp solution for City of London. And that was a project that I led where they wanted to create an app where there was a maintenance, the garden maintenance from City of London wanted to be able to take pictures of like faults that they found in gardens and then submit that, say this gate's broken. It would go to the back office, they would see the picture of it, order a new gate. It would automatically create a task for somebody who's a gardener to go and then fit that gate the following week. And it was a nice process which was all automated using Power Apps and Power Automate. And if you want any more examples of that, again, please feel free to email me because you are showing up as anonymous. So I'm not too sure who asked that question. I'll be happy to send you some links for some of those as well. A question there from Cara. I've been building an app and would like some help. Do you have a support desk system? Yes, so we do have a pre-built support desk system, and essentially it allows for a sort of two-way street in terms of people being able to submit tickets, and then also on the other side of it, say for example like an IT support where they might have some additional fields that they can fill out, and they have a sort of commenting box that go backwards and forwards. I'd be happy to give you a demonstration of that as well, of that, Cara. So if you would like to email me, I'll be happy to get that scheduled for you. Let's have a look. A question there from David. The date always seems to default to US format, which is confusing. Can we use UK format? Yes, definitely. You can use it sort of UK format. The main reason why that was defaulting, I think, for me, is because my regional settings for the site was set to US, which is usually just the default of SharePoint, but very quick and easy to change that. In fact, if I just jump into my SharePoint site, going to site information. Don't know what's going on with my my internet today. But essentially that, again, really easy. If you Google change regional settings in SharePoint, you'll find a link that'll show you how to change that nice and easily as well. So a question there, the PowerApp seem to be restricted to mobile views. Is there an option to use a web page on a PC instead? Yes, definitely. There's two different types of layouts for PowerApps. There's the mobile view, is what we looked at today, which is the portrait view. And there's also a landscape view as well, which they refer to as the tablet view. But essentially the tablet view can be used on desktop computers as well. It's just obviously expanded across the computer, and that also can be embedded. Well, any PowerApp can be embedded into a SharePoint page, for example. So there is a few more questions there, but I've realized we've just overrun on here. If you do have any further questions, please feel free to email us. So you can contact me by either emailing dougie@valto.co.uk, or you can email us at hello@valto.co.uk as well. There's some clients that we've previously sort of worked with and created quite a lot of different solutions for. If you have any questions, or you like some case studies about, say, for example, like the City of London PowerApp that we created, again, please feel free to get in contact. I'll be happy to share those with you. Thank you very much for joining, guys, and look out for the recording that will be sent out after this. Cheers. Bye-bye.